Thanks so much for joining us tonight. This is our third annual Pappy Van Winkle dinner. We have Preston Van Winkle joining us, fourth generation, joining us today from Kentucky. Preston, your dad sent me a text. I thought I was like the luckiest guy in the world to get a text from Julian Van Winkle. He said you guys had snow, but you've dug out and you're good.
We're all good. Yeah, we had a few inches. It'd been 60, 70 degrees all throughout December, and finally on the first couple of days of January, we got a cold snap, got a little snow. It's all melted now, and it's nice and sunny outside, but it melted and flooded my basement. So
For folks that don't know, Carl Kadar, we're down in his, let's say, man cave. He's got more music albums. Are they all originals?
What? Yeah, I don't buy fake copies. They're all originals. Yeah.
If you're into music and you make it to Delaware, Preston, this would be a kind of a cool place to go.
Yeah, let's see. We're talking to a guy who makes his living selling bourbon whiskey, and he's talking about albums. We got enough whiskey around here to choke a horse.
But you know what? The reason I bring it up, though, it's, as I read about it and read about your family and whiskey, sometimes you think about time. And so I wanted to ask you, as arduous as it must be to stay on top of the business and the quality and your responsibilities, what do you like to do when you have time?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Got 4 kids at home, so that takes up most of it. But otherwise, I love to play golf. Don't get to do it as often as I'd like to. We speaking of time, we've learned to be patient in this business. It's certainly you play the waiting game. So whatever it is I'm doing, I've learned to be pretty patient.
They can help with parenting.
No.
That's the one area where my patience tends to run out.
There's that patience.
Yeah, that and the dogs chewing stuff up in the house.
There's a woman who's a real probably the best pastry chef in this area in Delaware, and she has this fantastic macaroon recipe. And I'm like, hey, can I get the macaroon recipe? She's like, yeah. I'm like, here it is. She's like, just so you know, they're not going to come out the way I make them. She's like, this is honest to God, the recipe. I imagine over the years, you got folks working with you and they want the mash bill or they want the process and, but they can't duplicate it. Is that just tenacity and it's your patience? Is it something else?
There's a lot that goes into making bourbon, beyond just the mash bill, and the scientific know-how to do it. There's an art to it. The water source is important. The yeast is important. The still is important. The location of the warehouses is important. So you're talking this combination of all these different factors that make it what it is. So beyond just having a recipe and knowing how to convert starch into sugar and sugar into alcohol and distill it, there's a lot more to it than just just the know-how and the recipe. There's an art form to it for sure, and we've been lucky enough to have some of the best master distillers in the world either partnering with us or working for us over the 127 or so years that my family's been in the business.
On the gelato side, we have a restaurant, and it's mostly Northern Italian cuisine, but we do make our own gelato. And so we see in the kitchen, if we have too much sugar in a batch, we can add a little more butterfat and vice versa. Will the mash bill for you change depending on conditions, or temperature?
No, it's kind of, I'm not gonna say set in stone, but it's as close to it as you can get. You gotta start with all the right ingredients, use them in the appropriate measures, and at that point, you got to rely on the people who know what they're doing making it, and then you just let nature take its course. So, we can't really adjust on the fly the way you could with, say a nice marinara sauce or something, where you can add a little bit, add a pinch of salt or a pinch of sugar or, whatever the case may be. So we rely on the people making our bourbons for us to do it right, and then we just wait it out 10 to 23 years.
Now, and when you prior to tasting, or in wine they call it fiefs, right? Is that the same method?
Yeah, just a copper pipe. It's like taking your straw as a kid with your Coca-Cola and
put your thumb on it,
put your finger over the end. Yeah, it's just a copper. It's basically a large copper straw with a handle on it. Yeah, we just call it a whiskey thief.
Prior to tasting, each moment that you taste, and if you could, can you tell me, is it like a 1 week period or a 2 week period? I mean, to get through those, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 barrels, do you go back to the old Fitzgerald that you have? Do you taste that prior to doing it?
We taste against brand standards from previous bottlings, but at this point, with my father and me, it's we taste every barrel that we bottle, along with a panel, tasting panel of trained tasters from Buffalo Trace, our partner distillery. It's it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. So we know what we're looking for. A lot of times I don't even taste the brand standard, because I know what it's supposed to taste like. So it's kind of just ingrained in us when you cut your teeth on bourbon, especially our family's products. I'm 44. I've got 43 and a half years of
drinking bourbon,
tasting experience. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that there was anything called cough medicine that you could buy in a store until I was probably 12. Sorry, excuse me. Cough medicine was, an eighth of an ounce of bourbon, a little bit of honey and a little bit of water, maybe some lemon juice, mixed up, stick it in the microwave for a few seconds. And that was cough medicine when I was growing up. So I used to sneak sips of my dad's drinks when I was a kid, and my daughter stuck her finger when she was about two and a half. This would fall under the poor parenting headline, but when she was about 2 or 2.5, she stuck her finger in my drink, and before I could stop her, she licked her finger, and I thought she was gonna be grossed out, and she goes, yum.
What vintage was that?
I want to say it was the 12-year-old. I can't remember for sure, but I feel like it was the 12-year-old. So that was about, I guess, 5.5, 6 years ago. She's 8 now, almost 9. So
I don't know whether it's fact or fiction, but folks think that you do around maybe 70 or 80,000 bottles a year. Will you take that number to 100,000? Or
we're making more and more every year. Again, 10 to 23 years, so we can make all we want today, but it takes 10 to 23 years to bring it to market. So, we're not making chairs or vodka. We crank up the still and you can have a container truck full of vodka on the other side of the planet within a few weeks. It takes a while. So
I went to a liquor store.
we are increasing production, but we don't ever want to be sitting on top of a lake of whiskey we can't sell. Nobody knows how long this bourbon boom is going to last. It could go bust tomorrow. I don't think it will. We're anticipating that it won't, and most people in the industry are banking on the fact that it won't. But we've been in a position where we've had way more product than we had demand for back in the starting in the late 50s, really ramped up in the 60s and into the early 70s and beyond, where bourbon just fell out of favor. So we don't want to overproduce, but we are trying to make more and more each year, and we've bumped up production numbers over the last couple of years, and we'll continue to do so moving forward.
Will your children start tasting with you?
Hopefully someday. They're 12 and 8, so got a little time. The oldest of my parents' grandchildren is 12, so we've got a little time before the next generation will be ready to roll if they choose to get into the business. Hopefully we don't muck it up too bad between now and then.
And do you feel pressure from that? I mean, you're fourth generation. Your dad did a real good job, and and his dad did a good job, and it's like, and sometimes it's you read different articles, and it's like your dad came in and kind of saved it, but there was certainly good qualities, especially you look right at your website, good qualities that each of the generations have had. Do you feel a pressure that gets to you?
Yeah, for sure. I actually tried not to get into this business. I didn't think I wanted to do it, but I started doing a few bourbon related events with my father early on in college, and realized that I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I didn't want to be the generation to bow out. So there was never any pressure put on me from outside my own head, but I definitely feel the pressure to keep the ball rolling, keep the momentum going, and hang on to what the 3 generations prior to me have built. And I don't want my kids or my nieces and nephews to ever feel pressured into getting into this business. If they want it and it's still there for them, would be happy to have them involved, but I don't want them to ever feel like there's any pressure that they need to continue the legacy, because that's what that's. You can talk all you want about the whiskey itself, but we're really building and have built a legacy. And I'd like to think that I've done a decent job of maintaining it. 20 years in.
As hard as it is to get these bottles, sometimes people will, have them in their house, and they'll take, a sip here and there. So they'll have a bottle of 15-year, and they're drinking through it, and there's half left or 3/4 left. Is there anything they can do to preserve it the way it tastes when they first open it?
Yeah. So unlike wine, distilled spirits don't get better with age in the bottle. That is, as soon as that juice comes out of the barrel, it's oxidizing and evaporating in the bottle. So my best suggestion is to, if you anticipate, trying to make a bottle last over the course of several years, to use one of those wine saver vacuum corks, or that aerosol ozone kind of stuff that you can get at wine shops. Just anything to get as much oxygen out of the bottle as possible so it doesn't oxidize. There are some people that would argue that these old bottles from the 40s and 50s taste better because they've oxidized a little bit. I've never really bought into that. I can taste it on these older whiskeys, and it doesn't necessarily agree with my palate, but some people think it does improve the taste. I don't personally, but that's one of the great things about food and wine and spirits, and everybody's palate's a little different. So drink what you like the way you like it.
Sometimes they talk about Kentucky heat, or I guess the hotness of the alcohol content that you do. Is there one 15, 20, or 23 that's usually hotter than the others?
Well, I mean, the 10-year-old and the 15-year-old are both 107 proof. The 12 and 20 are both 90.4 proof, and the 23 years 95.6 proof. So there's obviously more alcohol heat with the 10 and the 15-year-old. I would argue that the 15-year is just as smooth as any of the others. It's my personal favorite. Oftentimes at tasting events, I'll have people try it before I tell them that it's 107 proof. And a lot of times they don't believe it right off the bat because it is so smooth, considering the high alcohol content. But so certain bourbons just work better at different proof and age combinations, and that's something that those proof and age combinations are arbitrary and just what my father chose as he was introducing new expressions into the lineup. He'd just taste various ages at various proofs, and just pick whatever he liked best, and seems to have worked out pretty well.
Is there a time of the year, just getting back to an earlier question, similar to harvest for the wine industry, where you, your dad, and your tasting team are going through all the barrels? Is there a time period, or is it continuous?
Yeah. So as far as distillation goes, the whiskey's made in the fall and early winter, or late winter, early spring. So that's typically 10 to 23 years down the road from that time period is when they come of age. So we'll taste during the spring and early summer months so that we can get everything bottled during the summer and have it ready to go in the fall. As we were talking before we got started officially, the 20-year came of age this fall, as opposed to back in the spring like it normally does. So rather than send everything but the 20-year out at the normal time, which is typically mid-October, we waited to send it all out at the same time. Just wholesalers, retailers, whatever, they get confused when something doesn't show up on their allocation. It's easier just to get it all out the door at once. So typically we taste let's see, April, May, June, and then spend the summer bottling.
Let's get back to, just a little bit of family stuff. So what's the best time then for family vacation?
July is when we typically do the big family vacation. My family's been going to northern Michigan for 2.5 generations. My parents have a place up there, and so we all pack up the family truckster and head up north, get away from the hot, humid Kentucky summer for a week or two, and have a nice big old lake to cool off in. Have a place.
Yeah, it'll stay light till 10 o'clock at night there in the summer.
Pardon?
It'll stay light out till like 10 o'clock.
It does, and it messes with the kids' heads. They can't figure out why they're being told to go to bed with the sun still up.
In that Pappy Land book that came out a year or two ago that Rick Thompson wrote, he said that either one or all three of your sisters got arrested there for drinking underage and riding a bike or something, is what the story says. But
more than
I asked
likely,
Mary last year, and she affirmed that part of the story was true.
Yeah, that doesn't sound unreasonable.
My God, that's so out of character for young people, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I know I mentioned to you earlier before we did this, and I think we're about wrapping up, but there's a couple folks that are asking like maybe some tech questions. One guy wants to know who's attending if you have a toast level to the barrels that you
we use a number 4 char. That's pretty much the industry standard. You can go a little heavier, but most distilleries, most cooperages are doing a number 4 char. It's about a 40 to 50 second burn.
Is there less spillage? Are there less empty barrels now than there were years ago, just because the barrels are built better?
More.
So
There are more.
More and more bourbons being produced, so there are more and more empties, and more people, whether it's beer, rum, tequila, scotch, more and more people using the spent barrels. With bourbon, we can only use them once. By law, bourbon can only be aged in a new barrel. So once we're done with them after that first run, that's it. We sell them off to barrel brokers, who then sell them to beer, rum, tequila, scotch makers all over the world. My sisters are using them to make barrel stave bowls and furniture.
And business of it?
Man, I don't know. I guess to work directly with Buffalo Trace, you got to be in like DC or somewhere. But we got a barrel once of something. Jason, what did we get?
It's Knob Creek.
Knob Creek. We got a whole barrel. Now we use it for a planter.
Yeah, I grew tomatoes in a couple of empty barrels.
A lot of the bourbon companies now owned by large conglomerates, and so you get things like Maker's Mark, right? The empty barrels go over to Lefroy in Scotland. So
yeah, a lot of empty. A lot of our empties, Buffalo Trace owns. They have Canadian whiskeys, some Scotch whiskeys,
and beer.
Tequila. So they keep a lot of them in house. Like I said, my sisters use them for some furniture and decorative items and whatnot. I get a couple every few years and plant tomatoes in them, and they make the market for used barrels is huge.
They make stout in them each year.
The Stout Goose Island beer
Goose Island makes Bourbon County stout once a year.
with their barrels, or
And
with
they
our
use
barrels?
Buffalo Trace barrels, and they've had Pappy Van Winkle releases that
Yep.
have had people lined up around the block as soon as it came out and sold it out.
I went to a store. I mean, we got, Delaware's pretty good with us with the distribution and the allocation. But I went to a store this morning. These guys were in like their snow gear and their army fatigue, and they had camped out all night. And door opens, and well, the delivery hadn't come yet, so they went home. And I went to another store, and he said it's a 10-year wait. I said, well, can I sign up? He's like, huh? I said, well, I'd like to sign up.
Get on the list.
Yeah, I want to get on that list. I mean, 10 years it comes out. As we wrap up, there's something, I don't know whether it's funny or not. And I don't think it was in Pappyland. I think I read it. I can't remember. I think it was like a Wall Street Journal review of Pappyland that had a quote from you, Preston, that essentially said that, the way your family drinks it, on the rocks, twist a lemon, is a good way to drink it. And who's to say it's not, since you guys make it and you drink it that way. And everyone up here, in Delaware wants to drink it neat, because my God, how could you pour it on ice if you're, if it's so hard to get? So give us your take on that.
Yeah, it's the way I learned. I mean, I drink it neat. I drink it on the rocks. I'll make a classic cocktail here and there, like an old fashioned or a Manhattan. But yeah, the point I was trying to make was drink what you like, however you like to drink it. There's no wrong way. Sure, I would hate to see somebody drinking 20-year-old Pappy and Diet Mountain Dew. I've seen it done. But my dad learned from his dad, who learned from his dad, on the rocks with especially the 10-year-old and the 15-year-old being the higher proof, on the rocks with a little splash of water and a twist of lemon. That lemon zest really makes the citrusy notes pop. Yeah, I've been told by bartenders that they wouldn't serve it to me that way before they knew who I was. I've had a lot of apologies from bar managers once they found out who I was after ordering it and being refused service. Yeah, typically I'd before dinner on the rocks, after dinner neat is kind of my go-to. Occasionally here and there, I'll like I said, I'll make an old fashioned. I love old fashions. My father's old fashioned is one that we learned from I make it way better than he does. It's just been dubbed. It's been dubbed his old fashioned because it sounded better. But we learned it from a bartender by the name of Johan Svensson, he's a Swedish fellow, lives in London. And he's really the one that kind of opened our eyes to the rebirth of classic cocktails. And his point was always, the better the ingredients, the better the cocktail. There's no sense making a cocktail with homemade bitters and fresh herbs and homemade syrups and whatnot, and then pouring some crappy liquor in there. Again, don't do it often, but there's no better old fashioned than one made with the 15-year-old Pappy. I've never had anything that even comes close. I've had a smoked old fashioned with the 23-year-old, and I don't do smoky stuff, so it didn't really sit well with me. But the technique used to make it was pretty impressive. But yeah, again, one of the fun things about this industry and food and wine, the whole hospitality game, on a large scale is the fact that there's something out there for everyone. And you don't have to pigeonhole yourself. People always ask me, well, what do you drink if you're not drinking your own whiskey? Well, beer, wine, tequila, gin, scotch, more wine. I'm a big fan of red wine. Yeah, it is fun to get out in front of people and, you know, show them that there can be something for everyone.
You have one
Yeah,
burning
I
question?
have one burning question that's been on my mind for years and years and years. And I know we're getting close to the end of the interview, and I appreciate all the time that you've spent with us so far.
I'm happy to do it.
And my question is basically this simple. Is there hope for us in the future? I mean, is there any more Barrel 107 Pappy left in the world?
No, that I think there may have been a misinterpretation of what was being said, because it was the 15-year 107 proof that was it was gonna be, we had tasted the 10 and 12-year-old 100% Buffalo Trace distillation, and the watershed moment was going to be when we tasted the 15-year 107 proof 100% Buffalo Trace distillation. That was kind of going to be our indication as to whether or not we were in good hands in terms of the whiskey that was being made for us. So we tasted it. It may come out of the barrel at around 140 proof. That's unusually high for our stuff, since it stays on the lower floors. Usually comes out at around 128 to 130. But yeah, it's 107 proof 15-year-old. And we were thrilled at the results that we got with that whiskey. And I think that's where Wright was going with that.
Thrilled that it made the trip, you said, right?
Thrilled. Yeah, and there's a whole lot of stuff that can go wrong in 15 years, but we were pretty floored with how well the whiskey made the trip to 15 and subsequently now 20 years. We'll be bottling 20-year-old this year, 100% BT distillate. I think Wright started working on the book around 5 years ago. 5-6 years ago, maybe.
The bottles that you see behind us, we're going to pour them all. We open them up, we're going to pour them. I was thinking one of the things, and I know you guys are doing different, security type stuff, and you can't, talking about it might help folks that are, doing nefarious things. But I thought about like smash parties, like, you buy a bottle, you videotape yourself like on a Instagram or a TikTok smashing the bottle, and then that gets you an entry to another bottle. That way you get rid of
self-direct. That would be great. There are, I think, only a handful of states where you can sell direct to consumer at this point. Where I think COVID has kind of shifted the paradigm from a consumer standpoint for sure, but it's caused industry-wide rethinking of things. If we could sell direct to consumer, we could do kind of a membership or lottery system.
Send your bottle back and we'll send you another.
Yeah, you have access to the next round. We at tasting events, we smash bottles or score labels or whatever, just so that they don't end up in the hands of somebody who's going to stick it up on eBay. It used to be that bottles empties went on eBay for like $7 to $15, and now they're couple $100. You know, I can
we'll do a
understand
smash.
everybody.
I think that's what we'll do, Carl. At the end of the dinner on Friday, we'll do a little smash Instagram thing. See if we could start like a viral trend or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If we find some
repost
kind
it
of
for
fancy
sure.
music to pair it to, maybe it made it work. You know, like get the.
We will certainly repost it if you do it.
Well,
We will do that. And hey, Preston, thank you. Is there anything you want to say to the folks in Delaware?
Thank you all for continued support of our brands. We wouldn't have gotten to where we are now without the support of the whiskey drinking community. So we appreciate everything that that people have bought over the years, and hopefully will continue to buy, and use your powers for good. Yeah, just thank you for your fandom.
Well,
And
thanks,
thank you all for the
Appreciate it.
opportunity to get on here and chat for a little bit.
I think we're done.
Are we done now? Because I'll go just turn on the fan, the exhaust fans, and enjoy my flying pig.
There you go.